Everybody, welcome. This is the European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure conference, and for 2020. And I'm happy to help kick off this panel discussion. My name is Christian Buckley, Microsoft MVP and Regional Director. And who do I have with me today? Why don't we kind of go around the room? I know we're out of order here. I'll just kind of, from my view, Maarten, introduce yourself.
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having me. Maarten Eekels from the Netherlands, also Microsoft MVP and Regional Director.
And Karoliina.
Hi, I'm Karoliina Kettukari from Finland. I'm a Microsoft MVP.
And Sasha.
Hi, I'm Sasha, and I'm also Microsoft MVP Azure MVP, and MCT as well, and doing security in Azure.
Excellent. And Eric.
Hey everybody, Eric Overfield from the United States, MVP and Regional Director as well.
And Mr. Chris O'Brien.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris O'Brien. I work for a company called Content and Cloud in the UK, MVP also.
Well, excellent. Well, the topic for today, of course, I know there's a lot to kind of cover. We're going to try and do most of this within an hour. A lot of topics that we're going to discuss, but from the announcements that came out of Microsoft Ignite, of course, this is the first time that Ignite has been online. Welcome to 2020, everyone. So there's a lot to go through, and one downside everything online for this, it's difficult with the crosstalk around this, so we're going to try and be a bit more organized in this. But I want to start off with a broad question, give everybody a chance. You can jump back in if you remember something else, but what were the major announcements, the things that really stood out to you from the announcements? A little bit of detail around them, but what kind of stood out to you?
I guess there were so many. That was also what stood out for me. There was, of course, normally when you are in Orlando visiting Ignite and you choose your sessions and you have the keynotes and all the sessions you want to go to, and you kind of cherry pick the announcements, and now you're trying to follow everything because you're online and you figure, okay, maybe I can check out this other session and then this other session. And there were so many announcements, so many. And of course, many announcements around Microsoft Teams. But I also liked about the project or SharePoint syntax, we should say, the successor or the evolution of Project Cortex, and all the stuff they announced around Microsoft Stream, that they're finally starting to use SharePoint as well as storage platform, and so much.
Yeah, I think I'd build on that. You know, perhaps one of the most pleasing things to see is that the pace of innovation is still there. You know, I guess we wondered whether Microsoft would sustain this, you know, engineering teams now working from home, not necessarily working in the same ways. But I think what we saw is huge amounts of features released to Teams and SharePoint, the Power Platform. So that was good to see. I think just to build on Martin's comments, perhaps some of the key Teams features that I really liked, the meeting recap. You know, we're all doing meetings, and that's a very inefficient process in many organizations at the moment. So to get an auto-generated recap with transcripts and speakers and so on is great. Breakout rooms, I think we all have bigger meetings that would benefit from those. That's a nice one. The support for custom layouts and being able to put some content in the spotlight while you're running through some key slides versus putting the focus back on you. Maybe Project Oakdale. So the sort of move to a release of that, which is basically the Power Apps and Power Platform capability in Teams. New search experience, there's obviously a bunch, but probably those would be highlights of Teams things for me.
Yeah, I'm also with Chris that for me, because I'm doing modern work and I'm also always looking at Teams as a teamwork and modern work perspective. So maybe all these new meeting capabilities in Teams, breakout rooms, new scenes together mode, those are the most interesting for me.
I saw a lot of announcements around Azure, of course, as well. But also I thought was interesting was the number of announcements in the different platforms kind of told me a lot more about where Microsoft is continuing to focus. And I saw 3 big areas: Azure, Teams, and identity and security. I thought that was really interesting. That was the key points that Satya Nadella had in his keynote. So for me around Azure, because you all did a great job, I think, of getting the high level points of SharePoint, Teams, etc., would be Azure Arc, Azure Sphere, and the really big one, Azure Communication Services. And I'm sure we'll dig into these 3, but there's some really big announcements to me around what Azure's been up to.
I also like the Azure Auto Manage. capability. So
Yeah.
like the optimization of your environments. I mean, I know that there are third-party solutions that are out there, but it needed to be part of the core capabilities in the platform as well.
There have been so many announcements and so many news, and it's like when someone asks you what child of your 5 children is your most favorite, and you don't know where to turn and what to follow.
We all have the favorite, we just don't speak of it.
Yeah, and I've been following mostly security feature, but also the others I've tried to stay along with the others as well. But I'd highlight, maybe Azure user and entity behavior analytics, and it's going deeper. It will have deeper consequences on how we deal with security and what it means for us. But also I like rebranding of ATP into the Microsoft Defender. So I think it's good for security because it's going to be less confusing. So probably now the transition is more confusing, but after that it will consolidate and it will be good. And then there are some other identity news as well, like AD application proxy features and etc. But there are a lot of things in networking too, etc.
It certainly wouldn't be an Ignite without some name changes.
Oh, of course.
Exactly.
And logo changes as well for the Power Platform.
Yep, and Power BI got a new logo too. I was looking for the icon. If you missed it, it's kind of a yellow version of like similar to Planner and kind of everything else. So it was good to see that as well.
And licensing changes, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Gonna mix that up. I'm actually surprised that didn't come out of the discussion out of Inspire this summer. Is usually where those kinds of announcements are made. They were still kind of locking things down, and so it kind of slipped that announcement, that discussion to Ignite.
Yeah.
So here's a question from me. We started talking about Cortex and SharePoint Syntex and so on, and some of the licensing for that has been announced. Does anybody have a view on that? Was it what you were expecting to see or anything different?
I think it's a bit different. What I like is that the fact that they kind of split up the whole AI modeler part, which is now Syntex, and the topic card part, which they already announced earlier as well, when they are going to release that later this year, somewhere December timeframe, hopefully. And that used to be Project Cortex as a whole, and they never ever said something in public about how the licensing would be, but we all kind of expected, well, maybe it would be part of E5, right? Because that's already something, that's the highest SKU that we have, and we're already paying a lot of money, so it should be part of E5. And now they said, no, it's not going to be part of E5, it's going to be a separate SKU. And they're going to split it up. So I like the last part, that they're going to split it up, because I know for a fact that there are organizations out there who are only interested in the topic cards, who are only interested in the AI modeler and the document recognizing part. But the fact that it is a different SKU and you have to pay for it, I think it will have some impact.
Yeah, and I guess the knowledge center and who can see the topic cards and the topic pages, that's where Project Cortex will really have an impact, and you want to maximize that audience in many ways, don't you? So I guess we'll see, what things look like in the final shape for that part.
Yeah, but then again, the whole syntax part, I like also the fact that because we already had the forms recognizer, but now you can use a kind of the same modeler that the Vision API already had to start recognizing pictures. You can now use that to start recognizing documents as well. So you can train a model to recognize, I don't know, contracts or agreements or different kinds of documents. And based on recognizing that document, you can then set, I don't know, retention times, label it, tag the document, provide metadata, etc. So I do think that there is space for that, especially in maybe the not so large organizations, or because I know there are quite a lot of organizations that already uses like the Kovaxes out there, or all the stuff that they already do to automatically tag and label documents, but there are many organizations out there that don't have that in place yet. And then I think this really brings value.
Well, that's a great point. I was gonna, not to go too much down the whole just talking about syntax. This is Syntax Hour, everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but is the you made that distinction of there's some people that are only interested in the cards and some in that. The reality is, just to clarify for folks, you have to have that content ingestion and classification engine. Whether, as Maarten, you have another third-party solution that is doing a lot of that. You can't just do the cards if you've not done the work in advance. The data won't be accurate. It'll be just a hot mess with cards, pretty cards on the front of it. You have to have your data, your content organized so that it can be then surfaced through that card interface. And so I was excited to see them announce the separation of syntax, just almost putting it into that category. And in my mind, it was like, well, prepping all these organizations that don't have that long history, because a lot of those other vendors come from moving paper-based into the digital world, and they're already thinking of how do we classify, ingest, process, templatize all of that content, that more structured content, and they're best prepared to go take advantage of then that Project Cortex card interface solution. But as you said, the majority of organizations are not prepared for that, and so they're going to have both pieces.
And on the one hand, it's about structured information. On the other hand, it's also about curating that content, right? So suddenly you also need people in your organization who can curate the topics and all the cards. And are these indeed the topics that we want to surface in the platform? Or do we want to add additional topics that maybe have not been found by the machine learning modeling, but maybe there's something I want to add myself? Or so you need topic experts, subject matter experts, but also, I don't know, some kind of a group of people that curate all the topics that you want to surface in your organization. It's a new role.
Yeah, and I guess the good news is that some things, are done for you and are made much more efficient, but it doesn't take away all of the things that are needed for this. It doesn't automate everything. Because as you say, Cortex is essentially proposing topics, but some work is needed to approve them, maybe curate them, maybe make sure that it's found the right experts and the right content. So as you say, the end-to-end isn't automated, and nor should it be.
Yeah, true.
Regarding licensing, let's not forget, if Microsoft has taught us anything, it will change. So I don't know how, but it will. And I'm not going to say it's going to get better or worse. Look at Power Platform, what they did there last year. So, I'm looking forward to seeing Cortex continue to spin out more aspects of what they've been showing us over the last year.
Yeah. And then
Gotta start somewhere.
And if you continue about licensing, there were quite so many products or announcements that is not included in the E3 or E5. For example, also the advanced communication plan or the well-being insights. Right. So pretty much stuff above your normal licenses.
Yeah. Not all clients that use E5 will need syntax, but I know some of the clients that don't have E5 or E3 will use some features of it. And if you remember, many years ago when Microsoft introduced a certain family of virtual machines, they after several years they just got the price 25%. So probably will similar here, as well as they synthesized the RMS with the Azure Information Protection. So or MFA, you don't pay for MFA today like you did in the past. So probably it will change, and hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
Hey, kind of related to this question, just a short comment and then let you guys respond to this. But the last couple years, as MVPs of the community, we received like a PDF of all of the announcements that were going to be made for some of these major events. And we would only get it maybe a week, but really just kind of 3 or 4 days in advance to kind of prepare blog posts to go live once the announcements were made at these events. For the last 2 events, so this year, Microsoft has released online rather than in PDF format the book of news. And so, how how, and I think we all received it at the same time, like in the world, it all came live, as the things were kicking off for the event. But how much time have you spent exploring the detail of the Book of News to find, other announcements and detail around those announcements?
I would say a lot, and maybe the table of contents within the Book of News is almost like the ultimate bookmark guide, because if ever there was a single place to go to quickly scan to remind yourself of what some key announcements were or some key changes, it's that table of contents, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I use it a lot as well. Of course, we got all the preparation being an MVP, and although I think this year they were a bit late, like I think my agenda, of course, here in Europe, because all the calls are hosted from Seattle and from Redmond, and so my agenda starting from 4 p.m. in the afternoon until midnight was fully booked for like a week and a half, just with announcement sessions and etc. And that's good, but usually you follow the announcements in your own award category. So, and we are all MVPs in a certain category for Microsoft. And within that category, that's because that's the products that you're most interested in, you're most knowledgeable about, etc. So this is also the category that you follow the sessions in. And then you have the Book of News, and I get to cherry pick all kinds of other announcements that I missed out on because they are announced in a different category, in a different product suite or etc. So I really use it a lot. It's very useful.
And not only some of the technologies are intertwined as well. So if you have to, if you're in SharePoint, you have to also do some Azure AD, and if you're in security, also there's Azure AD. There's maybe and so on. So you have to check all the things, the others as well. So.
It's a question I hear a lot, and I'm sure we all hear the same question. Is like, how do you keep up with all of the various announcements that are out there? And honestly, and I'll throw this out there as a suggestion. If there's anybody from Microsoft that's watching this recording, this panel, is make the Book of News a dynamic, year-round, just ongoing site. Like we can go and we chase things in the roadmap site. We're following after blogs. We're getting MVP, updates, through the various groups that we're on and all that kind of stuff. But I would love to have that collection of all of the formally announcements out there, public Book of News type structure on an ongoing basis, and maybe have them expire after 6 months, but just so that we see one place rolling of what's been out across those categories. Because even the roadmap site, to go and chase and find what's actually changed, and it would be great to see it within that format. Just
I agree. I think the message center in Office 365 has already improved a lot lately, even to the point that it's maybe now causing an overload because there's too many and everything is now a major announcement, and so there's too much stuff happening in the message center. But it's only for Microsoft 365,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
It's not for Azure. It's not for security. It's not for Defender. It's not. So one place to rule them all would definitely help.
Yeah, and one thing I do notice that's interesting is that some of the key blog posts that get published during a big event like this, Microsoft do go back and update them. So I have a bot that actually publishes them to a Yammer community within our network, and it's essentially detecting changes as well. And every day I notice a bunch of changes where somebody on the Microsoft side has gone back in to update the article, and it's resent it to our Yammer network. So, they do keep those up to date. But yeah, a really nice consolidated, updated Book of News would be even better, I think.
Yeah, great idea.
Well,
and of course, they're all listening, Christian. They're all listening.
Okay, of course.
Sure as well.
Well, but and the reason, the distinction between, again, the roadmap site and the blog posts and things that are out there is the Book of News are the things that are officially out there. There's no question, because I'm sure we all do it. Sometimes people will ask me a question. I'm like, I know part of the answer to this, but I'm trying to remember, was that in an MVP discussion that was NDA only, or was that public?
Yeah.
So having that, I mean, it really is a resource of I can go and talk about it and point to that specific resource. So just throwing that out there from Microsoft.
One last thing on the book of news that I want to be able to say, though, is that what I liked about it, not only was it public, you got the table of contents. When you got your short little blurb of content, they always link to their article, so then you get the full form. So I could absorb lots of things at the highest level. I could see things and go, I want to know about that. It's easy to go to. I still keep resourcing it. It's super easy to find. Microsoft Ignite 2020 book of news. Boom, it comes right up, and I don't have to remember the URL or anything. So I hope they keep that up. Absolutely.
Agreed.
And if you need something deeper, you just dive into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I also like asking this question. So kind of the question too, what was missing from the announcements? And this is another thing where, what were you hoping to see or hear more from that wasn't there? Obviously, NDA stuff, keep it NDA, things that we could, talk about. But was there anything that you were looking for and didn't see this time around?
Maybe one thing, last year at Ignite 2019, quantum computing was a really big thing. And I went to Mark Rusinovich's session about quantum computing, and that was basically the best session I have ever been to on any Ignite or SharePoint conference or whatsoever. It was truly amazing session, and for the first time ever, I walked out of that session and I thought by myself, I finally get this concept. I finally understand what it is about and how things work on a high level, obviously, but I did. So that was kind of something. Okay, did anything happen? Did nothing happen in the past year? Was there nothing new to tell? Maybe so, but that was something that was missing for me.
That was one of my
last year.
That was one of my favorite memes out of last year, was the Oprah, and you get a quantum computer, and you get a quantum computer. Look under your chair. There's a quantum computer for everyone.
Oh, no, there's not. Oh, yes, there is. Oh, no, there's not. That's quantum computer.
I wanted to see some sessions that are not so technical, but for example, something about Microsoft Research and especially the project that is going around with Azure data centers on the bottom of the sea, and the things that are going in that direction, and some news about it, and some future where are we or Microsoft going to be like 5 years from today and 10 from today. So I want to hear more about these things, for example.
That was interesting because it made the news, because the one that where was the location? Was it like off the coast of Scotland or something? Or where it resurfaced, and so that was mainstream news. But I don't remember seeing anything from Microsoft talking about that. That's a great point.
Yeah,
I think they had an article on their own news site, but it was not like publicized very into a large thing, or at least talk about the experience in a session at Ignite. Yeah, that could help. I do think that maybe these kinds of sessions, I don't agree with it, but I think that these kinds of sessions are usually more appear more at Inspire than at Ignite. And again, I don't agree, because I think these kinds of sessions definitely belong at a conference like Ignite as well. But yeah, I think that's the way it is right now.
Yeah, and the other type of session that's a bit like that I always really enjoy is back behind the scenes of running Microsoft 365. And those are always fascinating, especially if you have a background in infrastructure and development and how they come together. There probably was a session or two in the agenda, but I didn't catch it this year. But that's always a fascinating one. And I think my other observation would be, the shorter session length. That certainly has an impact. When you're used to a 55 or a 75-minute session, and many of these are shorter durations, the level that the speaker gets to tends to not go as deep, and you notice that in some of the technical topics.
Yeah, I agree. And then they say that a session lasts for 30 minutes, but they're already done after 20 minutes. So it's even shorter than they tell you that the session will be. So I like the format because you're online and me sitting here behind my desk the entire afternoon and watching a session for 75 minutes is maybe not the best idea, or I need loads of coffee.
Right.
But you're right, Chris. It definitely has impact on the depth of the technical sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would certainly say that the developer community seem to notice that. You usually get a bunch of deep dive sessions, maybe, and there's a bunch of things to talk about this year. Lots of advancements in SPFX, lots of advancements in Project Oakdale and how apps can be built, and the integration between the Power Platform and Teams. How you can bring in pro dev techniques to the Power Platform and so on. But lots of the sessions covering topics like these, they probably didn't get as deep as some people would like. But this is the challenge of running a large scale event, isn't it? And keeping people's attention when they are at home and surrounded by other distractions, perhaps.
Yeah. I have to say that as a Teams MVP, I'm super happy because Teams has developed so drastically during this whole year, and there were so many Teams-related announcements at Ignite, lots of which we have been waiting for months, like the breakout room. So I really like the whole content around Teams.
Yeah, true. There was so much. What I also liked about the Teams announcement is the fact that the whole live events and Teams meetings is going to be just one experience. Because right now it's quite horrible. And it works, but only to some extent. And I really like the idea that it's just going to be one kind of meeting, and up to 1,000 attendees. The attendees can interact and they can put on the camera, and you can have a conversation, etc. But beyond that, it will automatically turn into a view-only attendee. There will be a registration form where people can register for the live event, etc. Just from one single experience and creation. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of started to make the segue in. I'm just going to set up question 3 and we can continue talking on this, but kind of like what were the sleeper announcements, the things that kind of went under the radar of mainstream. And I think, Karoliina, it brought up a great point about all of the features that are coming out there. One thing I think that Microsoft has been trying to do is respond, because I think, again, my impression is that Teams went slightly off track of what they were thinking they would do this year at the beginning of the year. They've been trying to respond to the changing need. And so one of the things that's been talked about is like the event page creation, the ability to mute all. Man, I want that. As the presenter, to mute everybody, to be able to turn off the lobby feature and just have people come in. I mean, a bunch of things which we have in experiences with third-party webinar software that may not fit like the standard enterprise collaboration team meeting model, but they're going and building out these features because our new world, we're all doing so much in Teams, and they realize, hey, we need these other features that may not. It's just part of the new normal that needs to be there. So, any other sleeper features or announcements from the event?
Around Teams, I can add a few that I've seen. I haven't heard too many people talking about them. I think the 25,000 user per team, that's kind of cool. I mean, I think that a team that has 25,000 users is actually a problem. I mean, you can't really have 25,000 people in a team, but there are certain teams in larger organizations where you want every 24,990 to be in a viewing mode. As we see Teams sort of take over a lot of the intranet portal. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I think that's really important. And one last one I want to say, because I could spend the rest of the hour on this. I think that the live captionings with the speaker attribution is going to be really cool. Too often I'm speaking to Christian, I have no idea what he's saying. So I'd like to have that live captioning to Christian, and I'd like to know he's the one that's speaking. So I think that's another really cool feature that is not getting quite the attention I would have thought, but I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, good one. Maybe something that wasn't picked up as much by people as it should be. It's I think the whole idea that Stream is putting the content back into SharePoint. I think that really helps because we have been waiting for guest access and for APIs for Stream for ages, and it has been postponed and postponed again and postponed again. And now, well, they made, I think, a really smart move. Of course, it's a little bit ironic that first we had Office 365 video with everything in SharePoint, and they moved away from it and they started a new product, a new platform called Stream. And everyone really liked it because it looked fresh and slick and it worked nicely and performance was good, but it had a couple of, well, things that didn't work or that we expected. And now they're moving back to SharePoint, which solves all these problems that I just mentioned, because SharePoint already has a proper API, has an API, a rather proper API, yeah. And SharePoint has the ability to have guest access and etc. So I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, and security and compliance features and DLP are all on. Yeah. But we just need to make sure that all of the things that Stream started to do really well, perhaps the noise suppression, the speaker transcripts and identifying where a speaker is talking in a particular video, all of those things need to be preserved, I think, as things come over to this side.
I think what they said is that they will be preserved. Of course, we still have to see it, but all the front-facing side of Stream won't change too much. It's just the back end. So the files themselves are stored into SharePoint and OneDrive, but Stream itself will stay as a product.
We also had announcements around lists, and I haven't heard anybody mention Project Nucleus.
That was going to be one of my sleeper announcements, actually. Yeah, Project
Chris,
Nucleus.
I'll let you go.
So, Yep. So this sort of fast offline cache that can support up to 200,000 rows or maybe a higher limit, I can't remember. But essentially, this is a client-side cache that's going to be behind Microsoft lists, any SharePoint list. It's going to support offline and resync when you're connected. That's going to open up lots of scenarios, but essentially, this unlocks the ability to get past list throttling and any kind of constraints around 5,000 items and the need for an index on the SharePoint list that you may or may not have been expecting. So that's a huge thing that will develop into something bigger, I'm sure. And great to hear some of this innovation that's been happening under the scenes. And the other sleeper announcement for me was actually something to do with the Power Platform, where historically there's always been something of a limit where you need in a Power App or a Power Automate solution, perhaps to just call out to a small API or call out to just 5 or 10 lines of code that you've written. Historically, you'd hit a wall with that because you need a custom connector, which now needed premium licensing. There was a charge for that, but Microsoft have built the ability to host this in Azure API management. You can call into it for free, no additional licensing required, so long as this is a Power App within a team. That's the constraint. So this needs to use Project Oakdale, the new capability of bringing together teams in the Power Platform. But at least there's a way of doing this kind of thing without immediately needing a load of expensive licensing.
Mm-hmm. Well, so Eric, you and I have had this, we've talked about this feature, but you brought it up in your intro about the Azure Communication Service. Yeah. And I know that for most people that are collaboration focused or even Azure focused, Dynamics 365, it's kind of a thing. It's out there. There's a lot of people using that. I come from a telephony world, so I spent the first 12 years of my career primarily within the telephony space out of California, and so I kind of have that ear for anything that's a unified communications. I was at Microsoft when a lot of the acquisitions, the name changes of the UCS platform were happening. So why don't you tell us what about that? It was a big announcement around the communication service.
Basically, Microsoft is opening up the communication platform that runs Teams to us, to anybody. You can basically build your own communication, what they're calling communication experience, on top of the back end of Teams. That's huge. Definitely to me an enterprise kind of thing. This is not something a lot of small organizations would do, because why would you want to just duplicate all that extra work? But I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's something that can scale out really well, and you can build your own communication experiences. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and Microsoft are really going after that telco space in certain ways, and making sure that their cloud is the thing that can support that. So if you're building contact center solutions, or you've got a product that is needing, codec or transcription or something else, then what they're saying is use Azure, and we're providing a nice layer for you to plug into this really easily.
Yeah, they're using these communication APIs to do it. It seems really cool to me. When I heard it, my jaw dropped a little. Like, wow, you're opening all that up. Beyond that, wow.
Well, for those that aren't familiar with some of these solutions, I mean, Microsoft, this will be the first end-to-end omni-channel solution. The example that they gave was like an integration between marketing, sales, and support organizations, where you have the real-time transcription of a support call coming in, based on the transcript that's going in real time. So obviously with all of the conversation, all the dialogue captured against the CRM. It can kick off other automations based on what's happening within that discussion. People within marketing and sales can go in and see these conversations that are happening against that customer profile. I mean, it's just a really just a fantastic solution, which, as you said, it took a lot of vendors, a lot of different parts to go and build that kind of solution. And now you can get all of that from Microsoft. It's pretty exciting.
I think over the next couple of years, we'll see some really cool ISV solutions come out that are able to help offer that at a per user, per device, per something licensing. I think it's smart. I think that it's going to drive a lot of Azure consumption for Microsoft, and it will provide a lot of ability for people to create their own solutions.
Yeah, you hear of things like real-time sentiment analysis using Azure Cognitive Services of calls that are happening right now, which is great for an organization taking lots of calls, or some kind of contact center. And then, a manager or somebody that's a bit more experienced in some of the call handling can see which calls could benefit from being directed in a certain way. Lots of real-time capabilities that you can tap into.
Any other sleeper announcements, even little things that just kind of caught your attention?
Well, not really a sleeper announcement because it was in the keynote, but what do we think of Azure Orbital, right? Using satellite data.
So I was wondering about this. I was going to talk about it. So, something really cool and eye-catching for sure. But the question I started to debate is whether it really is just that. Is it designed to be a talking point and to demonstrate that in the public cloud space, Azure is the most innovative, the most forward-thinking? And then, that's something that CIOs go on to talk about, and, look at what they're doing. This is amazing. Clearly they're at the cutting edge. And maybe that's what the focus is. That's what it's about. An open question.
Could be. I don't see Microsoft launching their own satellites and tries to get that data in. Well, maybe they are. I don't know. But yeah, it is something that is catchy, right? And that catches your attention. But what's the real value? Where are you going to use it? What kind of data are we getting from the satellites then? We already have weather APIs that we can use. So why would we need direct information from a weather satellite? So I agree. It's also a little bit about catching or asking for attention. But then again, it's cool. I like it. It's
last year, quantum computing was doing sort of the same. I mean, quantum computing needs to be investigated, in my opinion. The competition is absolutely doing it, but it's a long way out. I mean, it really is from mainstream. I would say the same thing here. So I think it's important Microsoft does these things. They do them every year. They always have some kind of cool new thing they're working on, and I think it also shows their innovation, but also it shows that they're looking at what's not going to be today or tomorrow or the next week, but what's going to be the next on. Having a data center under the water They talked about that at the keynote. Is that really important? Yes and no, but it's sort of like, wow, look, they're the only data center, they're the only cloud provider that has a data center success into the water. Who knows? Maybe that's something that we're all going to need.
I think it's a major thing because it's the most expensive aspect of running those data centers is the cooling costs.
Fair.
And so they're able to dramatically decrease the energy needed to run the data centers. That's a big thing. But I think to your point, it's important to have R&D.
Yes, exactly. There you go.
Yeah. I wish we had even more insight into some of the R&D. I'll tell you, one of my favorite things about being a Microsoft employee was going and looking on a regular basis. I think like on a quarterly basis, it may have been more frequent, over to the R&D team building 99 and they would just present the projects. There was never rarely a connection with products that were out there selling. These were pure R&D, and to see kind of the future, what they were looking at, and getting you to kind of ask questions, and to your point, get Microsoft's perspective where the future of work is going. Interesting things, but for the data from the satellites. I mean, I had just kind of a moment there with a son who's at university and specializing in atmospheric sciences. It was I was like, hey Nick, you got to go take a look at this stuff. It's something that you might be able to use in a project. And he was very excited to go and see it. And then he asked the first question I didn't know the answer was, well, how much does that cost? I have a smart boy.
Maybe it's not about putting servers underwater or satellites, but it's what will these actually lead to. So that's mostly the point. Yeah.
And there was the meme right away of like, it had to do with, once they made that announcement, somebody made the jump of like, we could, Microsoft technology could be on the surface of Mars in the next 10 years. And then of course somebody did a meme of Elon Musk in a Tesla on Mars and getting a blue screen.
Right. But it's true, every tech company needs the odd moonshot. This is important to demonstrate the level that you're operating at. One thing about Azure Orbital before we move off that jumped out at me, did anybody notice in the UI that in the Azure portal it says spacecrafts with an S? Is that the right plural form of that? Could you ask your son, perhaps, Christian? But that seems strange to me. Maybe it's correct, but
no. But then again, some people say the word maths.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So, and I would argue as an American that is the improper plural. It's just math is the plural. But anyway. But hey, Karoliina, welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you. I just being in Finland, which has like the best internet connection in the world, it failed me.
Ah, excellent. Well, do you have any other kind of sleeper features that kind of stuck out from your experience?
Actually, I was going to say the same as Eric. So the 25,000 users in one team, I think that's huge, because when we are thinking about Yammer teams, do we need Yammer anymore? Maybe in the future. So I think that's huge, and of course, it needs governance for it not to become a chaos very, very quickly.
I have to say that at the MVP summit a couple years back, where they announced the increase to 10,000 for a team, that there were about 200 MVPs in the room, and overwhelmingly it was boos. People were not happy with that, because it fundamentally, and I agree with the commentary that, like, I think if you're trying to shove 25,000 people into a team, you're using the platform wrong. That's my personal feeling. That's what having a portal is for. You start to go into that area where using Yammer is the right platform for that. So I like Microsoft's retooling of messaging over the last couple of years of use the right tool for the right job, and not try to force fit. And that comes from those of us that come from the SharePoint world, force fitting every solution into SharePoint, and that worked out so well for some.
And I guess here's where we get into that debate about, could your digital workplace just be Teams? Could you have the intranet in Teams and so on? And, of course, there are ways of building out reasonably nice experiences there. You can build something around tabs and so on. But I still think that the distinctions we have between SharePoint, Teams, and Yammer, they serve us well at the moment, and bringing the increased integration, like being able to pin the home site in Teams and access it that way, that's great. But the richness that we can construct in terms of the user interface and user journeys within a digital workplace in SharePoint, that's still important compared to what you can do in a team. So I think these three tools, they all still have their place, and it's right for Microsoft to find better ways of integrating them, perhaps to bring some of the experience into Teams. But can a team on its own be your digital workplace? I would still argue no.
Yeah, well, I do have conversations with organizations nowadays that they are struggling with the fact that they need to move to another application to do other, I don't know, activities within their digital workplace, right? So they think, okay, I have an intranet, and when I want to work with people, or when I want to collaborate, why do I need to go to another application? And then you start going into the conversation, okay, but if you need to create a PowerPoint presentation, you also start a new application, right? And but Teams, we cannot brand Teams. No, it's purple. And but I want to brand my intranet. So if I want to bring my intranet to Teams, I cannot brand it in the way that I want it. So it makes sense to have the separate. I agree, to have the separate apps and separate applications for different workloads. Do and make sure that the application does what it does best, and stick to that in that application, and don't try to fit everything into one application. I agree. Although we did make a lot of money, the consultancy companies, about bringing everything into SharePoint back in the days, but yeah.
That's right, and everything works for 9 to 12 months, and then you're back in there fixing stuff, right?
Yeah, until the next cumulative update. Yeah,
that's exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? So two things that these are small things, but I just kind of, it was just like, yeah, I can't wait to try these things out. But like I'm a big task management guy. I mean, I started my career as a technical PM and built PMOs for organizations. So I love that Microsoft has now a strategy for Microsoft 365 tasks. So from To-Do to Planner to Project Desktop, Project Online, Azure DevOps, across all those things, and see little things like they talked about in the at mention and notifications that you can do within lists, and across, that's one of the common threads across all of those. Save the desktop, Project Desktop, which of course is disconnected. It's the on-premises solution. But even then, you can do a sync and push out tasks to Planner and eventually have notifications, but that you'll get notifications where if somebody goes and mentions me in a list, I get a notification in To-Do. If in Planner or Project Online or Azure DevOps, you're going to have that ability with the To-Do app to see across every project, every plan that you're a member of, every board that you're a member of, and get those notifications, and then organize your day. Like, here's the things that I have to do. That is amazing. The one other feature that I really, it was a kind of a sleeper for me, but was the ability when you move in SharePoint, move a file at that point of move to change the permissions, change who has visibility to that. You don't have to go back up into do the small migration, move things between sites, adjust the permissions there. You can do it at that item level with what you just moved at that point, that context. It was so important there. And that's just one of those little things that annoyed me when I just wanted to go do something quick and simple, and now have that ability. It's a big deal.
On the other hand, that could mean exposure as well, right? If you're moving something to an archive, or to a certain site where you expect things to be, I don't know, read only or not accessible to some people, and then the permissions drag along with that file, So I agree, it's very useful, but it has some caveats as well that you need to be aware of.
Well, that's why I'm the third party, the ISV solutions that give you that more advanced reporting, that visibility into what's happening with permissions across down to the item level. If you've got those in place, then you're still in good shape. But I understand the added complexity that it adds and potential problems.
Yeah, perhaps the other good SharePoint feature that I really liked was the app bar. So the enhanced navigation within a site, and it's essentially providing a almost like a My Apps like waffle style experience, but within SharePoint, and I think that helps tie some things together. So you could see them continually innovating forward.
We heard some confusion there, but people were just like, well, is it it's the left rail, the other left rail?
Yeah.
We haven't at all touched on SharePoint tools for communicators that that Microsoft announced. The two that I think are kind of cool was the ability for communicators to boost news. There's some caveats around that, but there's some really cool features around boosting news and improving the visibility of certain news posts as they come out. But something else I liked around the news for communicators was the ability to share news across many different platforms: SharePoint, email, Teams, Yammer, kind of all with one button. I wouldn't call these at all sleepers. These were pretty big announcements in the SharePoint space, but I do think they were important to make sure that if you are working with SharePoint and you haven't heard about those, you'll want to go do a little bit of research, because I think this will really help make SharePoint even more relevant.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. We're almost to the top of the hour here. Just kind of any other last takeaways. What would you say? Maybe we could go do kind of the rounds here of, people that maybe saw one or two things. Where would you point them to go take a look at and do more of a deep dive right now? And Karoliina, why don't we start with you?
I actually love the fact that Ignite is online, because you can watch all the sessions online afterwards. And then when you go to a session page, you actually find all the related resources and related sessions. So just pick a topic which you're interested in, and then go to one session page, and then you'll deep dive into all the other sessions and resources as well.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, sorry, Sasha, but to piggyback on that, the promise that you make yourself to watch all the recordings after Ignite finished, make sure you keep yourself to that promise. Go and watch these sessions. Yeah.
Well, add them to your backpack. I mean, that backpack will remain, so you can go back through that list and check them off.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, Sasha, any final takeaways?
Oh, well, I would just say Microsoft Defender is here, so it's no longer ATP, so no longer Advanced Threat Protection. It's now Microsoft Defender and the whole family. And beyond, what's most important is the underneath what's going on underneath that. So it's the extended detection and response, and the advanced algorithms and detection methods, and UBA, like user entity behavior analytics, and everything that goes beyond that actually will make our world much safer and future proof as well. So that's one of my favorite features.
All right, and Chris.
I think for me, actually, Microsoft Search and some of the innovations that were announced but aren't quite ready yet, that's an area to dig into. The ability to perhaps have some custom refiners and verticals and different result types, but to do that across the whole of sort of SharePoint and Office.com search, that will be really powerful. Also, the capability that's been announced privately to some of us as Turing at work. So more semantic search, less need to get a search term exactly right when you're trying to do something complex, more of a natural language thing. Also, the who knows what, that will be good. Suggested searches and your personal sort of history of searches that you've performed to go back to. A bunch of things coming there. And I think that's, because they're not all launched yet, that's a good area to spend time researching.
And Eric.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make this quick here. First of all, if you try to get a summation of all this, the book of news is, to me, your starting place. It's the easiest way to absorb all this. The second thing I want to say is around my experience with Ignite in general in these online conferences that I think is really relevant for ESPC, for Ignite in March 2021. I was unable to mind space my time to say I'm going to attend Ignite online because I have all these other things going on. I'm not physically somewhere. And I believe it's really important that if you're going to attend these conferences, you work with your bosses and say, hey, look, I'm going to a conference. I may be my home, but give me the opportunity to spend the 4 or 6 hours a day attending this conference, because otherwise we're all triple tasking already. And I heard this from a lot of people as well. My whole organization, we just had problems trying to fit in Ignite into our daily life. And I would argue what we're going to find is you need to work with the organization to say, I'm at a conference. I can check email these times, but I'm going to be attending 4 hours of sessions, 6 hours of sessions, et cetera. Because I miss that. And I also really miss the social interaction, but that's topic for another day.
Yeah. And the one thing I think that's a great point, because I mean, we all did that. I had one day that I had dedicated, the first day, the second day, I had plans and the best of intentions, and then work happened. But it's look, there's a lot to go and take a look at. I think one of the things that while I miss seeing everybody's faces and the interactions that you have, I would spend the majority of my time in the expo hall, talking with people, meeting with vendors, is to if you have questions, no matter whether it's a Microsoft person that's presenting the sessions that you're looking at, or somebody from the community, is don't be shy, reach out and connect with them. If they have MVP title, then they are natural connectors. They will respond to your emails, but reach out with your questions and get in touch. So have that social interaction. Just don't just rely on and have unanswered questions for the technology. Reach out to those Microsoft people and to the community members. Yeah. And so with that, well, thank you all so much for taking time out from your day and participating in the panel. And hopefully we'll see everybody soon. And for everybody that's watching, enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.
See you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.